All right, the whole discussion with Sasha Banks and Charlotte being in the Hell in a Cell is definitely going to be a discussion for something later. I'm probably going to do a video on it. But honestly, I just want to get this whole thing over with. No intro to this review or anything like that. Because honestly, this just feels like any other Raw. Like, this is supposed to be the go home show to Hell in a Cell. They have 3 major matches, and yes, I actually saw all over Twitter that people were saying, I don't know why they're saying it's 3 main events. It hasn't been 3 main events. Yes, there is 3 main events. When it comes to Hell in a Cell, anything with the Hell in a Cell in it, or the actual structure in it, excuse me, is deemed the main event, in my opinion. This is coming from me, my own personal theory. Now, when it comes to a Hell in a Cell match, Hell in a Cell match is supposed to be special. And usually back in the day, you would always have one Hell in a Cell match, which happens to be the main event. We have 3 major feuds with 3 Hell in a Cell matches, and one being the women's. The women's for the women's championship. Now, I have my own video for that, and I will get into that a little bit later. But anyway, yes, it is a main event for that reason, and that's just my own personal theory. It is actually a main event because the Hell in a Cell structure is going to be used. That's the reason why it's there. Now, when it comes to the actual Raw tonight, the one thing that I actually did find pretty comical, and before I thought was like really stupid and kind of going back to Jericho's thousands, I guess his thousands hold list. I thought it was a reference to that, and yeah, it was fun. And honestly, I'm not gonna lie, I actually found it funny. Him practically spending the entire night searching for his list. I thought that was kind of hilarious. I thought it was pretty funny and pretty comical. But the overall purpose of an actual go home show is to promote your pay per view, and they did very little of that. My biggest concern is definitely between Lesnar and Goldberg. It was great to see Goldberg last week, but it would be nice to actually see Goldberg in the same building as Lesnar. And honestly, the fact that Paul Heyman couldn't even save that really shows that this really doesn't have much of a leg to stand on. So did that match at WrestleMania. Oh gosh, I don't even think I should bring that up. We all know how bad that match was. Not to mention that both guys were on their way out and they can care less how the match actually turned out, which is my biggest concern. We know that Brock Lesnar is Brock Lesnar, and occasionally if he doesn't want to perform, he don't have to, and he won't. With Goldberg, he might have a lot to prove, and he also has a lot to invest in, especially with his name on the line, so he's going to try to do something. But my biggest concern is that if you have these guys in the ring actually doing something, then it's going to lose interest. This isn't even for Hell in a Cell. This is actually for Survivor Series. So it would have been nice of the fact that in Brock Lesnar's hometown, that at least Brock said something, opened his mouth, because it seemed like Paul Heyman couldn't even save the segment. That's bad. That is extraordinarily bad. If Paul Heyman can't save a segment, that's really bad. I got huge amount of concerns for this. Like, seriously, no doubt. And when it comes to the other Hell in a Cell matches, people cannot say, and I'm just going to put this out there, people cannot say that the women's title is not being promoted. The fact that you had the women out there with a contract signing for Hell in a Cell means something. Not to mention that they literally took this in stride. Now everyone's saying, oh, it's just a glorified cage. Yes, it is a cage. It is somewhat of a glorified cage. But Mick Foley had every reason to be as emotional as he did. As he was in that promo. Because the guy nearly died twice. Hell in a Cell can be a very dangerous structure. You can use the cell itself as a weapon. But other than that, there's going to be a lot of things that they used to do that they can't do in there. Now, I'm trying not to get too much into it, and I might actually do a video about this a little bit later. But I'm just going to move on from there, so I won't really get into it that much. But other than that, guys, this is going to be a very short review, and I'm just going to say this. They really do need to do a better job in having better go-home shows. They really do. The go-home shows should be geared to the pay-per-views themselves, be geared towards the feuds on the card. That is what it should be geared for. they if you want to put a filler match in there, then fine, have at least one, but don't have many. Now I know we're gonna have matches that are there that are not Hell in a Cell matches. We're only gonna have 3, but then everything else is going to be a non-cell match. Now you can promote those, but any match that's not going to be on the card, like Curtis Axel versus Bo Dallas, it doesn't make any sense. Even though, I'm not going to lie, Curtis Axel is still trying to find his place, and every time he brings up his dad's legacy, it makes me cringe, because I know that they're going to bury him. And that's the messed up part about it. And yes, I'm using the word bury. Now, I know that he is not entitled to actually have to be pushed because of who his dad is, and that shouldn't be the case. But the problem with Curtis Axel is he has been forgettable. The guy happens to be the son of Mr. Perfect. He has a lot to prove. And for some reason, he's been in faction after faction, but it's never paid off for him. Even going solo for a while has not paid off for him. Nothing has paid off. He's like the Heath Slater of Raw. That's kind of messed up. It really is. I'm rooting for Curtis Axel. Before, I thought I considered him the forgettable one, but I'm honestly kind of rooting for him. I really do want him to have a good run. But it looks to me that they're promoting Bo Dallas as a heel, and he's going to end up being, kind of lost in the shuffle. Now, for this whole list thing, don't get me wrong, it was hilarious, but the fact that Stephanie was playing along with it was kind of odd in itself. I mean, I honestly thought that Stephanie was going to go out there and be a heel and literally be like, look, if you don't perform now, I'm going to have to spin you, and not act like a mom. But the one thing I actually did talk to Mimi Shells, and for those that have not, don't follow Mimi on Twitter, follow her at I am Mimi Shells. She is hilarious. But other than that, I talked to her on Twitter about this, and I'm wondering, does anybody think that Stephanie's pregnant again? Like, seriously, I'm really thinking that Stephanie is pregnant again. She usually wears very tight outfits that really shows her figure, as well as tight suits. But she wore the baggiest shirt I have ever seen in my life. The fact we haven't seen her that often was the same time that she actually was pregnant with, I think, her first daughter. But something is telling me that she could be pregnant again, and we might not see her for a while, maybe in a few months. Hence why, when she came out there, I'm sorry. In my opinion, I really do believe that Stephanie is pregnant again. I wouldn't be surprised if she's 3 months by now. But that's just my own personal theory. That's the reason why we've probably been seeing Mick Foley for a while. Because I really do think that Stephanie is pregnant and she's about to pop out a kid probably in the next few months. That's just me. My own personal opinion. But other than that, when it comes to the storyline between Triple H and what he did to screw Seth Rollins, that's falling flat, and Seth Rollins is doing his best to try to drag that storyline on as much as he can, but he doesn't have a leg to stand on. And if this feud is going to go towards Survivor Series, then somehow we got to start seeing Triple H now. And I know that Hell in a Cell is right around the corner, but next week on Halloween, I'm hoping that we actually do see Triple H a lot more, because if they're going to do this for Survivor Series, they need to start this right now. But it's just, everything just seems to be falling flat. I don't really know what's going on with this Raw. This Raw had some entertaining parts, and this is my overall thoughts here. It did have some entertaining parts, but it just didn't do anything to sell the pay-per-view for me. Especially if you have 3 main events. You got to do a lot more with it instead of having Chris Jericho and Kevin Owens in the show. That's not going to work. But other than that, guys, that's my overall thoughts about this Raw. I really didn't think it was horrible, because there were some parts that I actually did enjoy, but it just didn't do a good job promoting the pay-per-view, which is this Sunday. So that's a big problem for me. But other than that, guys, that's my overall thoughts about Raw. What are yours? Leave in the comments below. I will see y'all later with my predictions probably sometime this weekend. Peace out.